Good evening and welcome to Mountain Bears. I'm Aeson and of course I'm sitting down with the cubby with mimosas. Techy-Joe, how are you, darling?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you this evening?
Oh, evil as normal. Slowly planning to take over the world and some.
Hey, there you go.
I know, right? All right, so let's see. It looks like the Pentagon's finally fixing their shit. Let's dig into this.
Yeah, so the Pentagon changes discharges for 800 plus vets kicked out for being gay. This is from military times. So about 820 veterans previously kicked out of the military for their sexual orientation will have their dismissals upgraded to honorable discharges following a year-long review of their service records. The upgrades were announced Tuesday morning by Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, who said the effort was undertaken to address the harms done by Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and other policies on these former service members. The review was prompted by complaints among veterans that the process for upgrading discharge status was overly complicated and adversarial. The changes mean that those veterans for the first time will be able to access certain VA education, health, and financial benefits, a potential windfall for them and their families. I don't think we're going to call that a windfall.
No.
I think it's a good move and it's well deserved. It's not a windfall.
Right.
But the military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was put in place in 1993 as a compromise to allow some level of military service for gay, lesbian, and bisexual individuals. But advocates said the policy was enforced erratically and discriminatorily and forced those troops to keep secrets about their personal lives from friends and commanders to the detriment of unit cohesiveness. Mm-hmm. Now, if you remember right, that was the whole thought process, was that you would have more unit cohesiveness without obvious gays in the military.
Right.
Yeah. That never worked for anyone.
Well, no. The Romans actually preferred gay men in the military.
Well, there's that.
Because I'm sorry, you mess up a glitter bear's hair, he's going to destroy shit.
Well, there's that. That is true. Nearly 13,500 service members were forced out of the military under the policy, according to the Defense Department records. The policy was repealed in 2011, allowing LGBT individuals to serve openly in the ranks for the first time. In a statement Tuesday, Austin said that because of military review policies in recent years, 96% of the individuals forced out of the service under the law have now been awarded honorable discharge status. We will continue to honor the service and the sacrifice of all our troops, including the brave Americans who raised their hands to serve but were turned away because of whom they love, he said. We will continue to strive to do right by every American patriot who has honorably served their country. Defense officials said individuals eligible for upgrades because of the most recent review will be contacted by department staffers on next steps for getting appropriate paperwork and benefits applications. So how did we get from... So 13,500 were discharged under the policy.
Right.
96% of those have been awarded honorable discharge status.
Right.
And so I guess that leaves the 820 that have been in limbo.
Right. And now they get the honorable discharge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. Sorry, I was having to try to process that. Like, what? How did we get... What?
Yeah, it's math.
Okay. Yeah. Well, but it was one of those things. It was like, wait a minute. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But very awesome. Very awesome.
And it's like, about time, but we're what, 2 decades out? 3 decades out?
Yeah. 30 years later, 31 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder for how many this will be too little, too late, as in they've already perished.
Right.
that they've come out of the military, came out with a dishonorable discharge. They were basically abandoned by our government.
Right.
And yay, you get a burial in a cemetery. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, it depends on where they are in their discharge. This will now give them access to the GI Bill. They should have already had access to. They'll have to go back and pay for student loans. They should have already paid for. They should have some level of medical coverage. Depending on what level of how many years they were in, they may get retirement. Now they can qualify for disability. Now they should be able to at least get psychological help if that's available. Like, there's a lot of aftercare benefits that dishonorable discharge does not give you.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, like when we're talking about this was, like this is 30 years later.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about these service members,
right,
we would be talking potentially people in their 50s.
Yeah.
People in their late 40s. That and 30 years ago.
Right.
Was a very rough time in our political landscape.
Right.
To suddenly find yourself dishonorably discharged.
Exactly. I mean, like, there's a lot that went into this, a lot that was problematical, a lot that was a lot disheartening, especially when you have people that have been in the military almost 20 years, because 20 years of retirement.
Well, and especially when you think that a lot of people, and I don't always like the way the phraseology goes with this, but use the military,
right,
as a vehicle,
right,
to get out of situations to start with. Like we kind of talk a lot about that in West Virginia, that a lot of people use the military to escape West Virginia.
Right.
That like, if you're not going to college and you weren't a professional sports player or you don't have that skill level,
right,
there can be a lack of opportunity to leave here,
right,
at least historically, and certainly as far back as the 90s,
right,
that people would have still been trying to choose the military,
right,
as a vehicle out of
rural
communities where they were already, had pieced together, this is going to end well. And to then, kind of have that moment where you're dishonorably discharged and you don't have a support network and you don't have resources and you're just kind of dumped out in the world. That's a really frightening situation to be in.
Right.
So that's why I kind of have that concern about how many of these individuals comprise some really ugly stories of having to really fight their way out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, literally, you join the military at a time in which there were a lot of world events going on. Pardon?
To get out.
Because if you look at like mid 90s, we're still like Desert Storm,
right?
All the way into like the early 2000s. That's a time in military history. Like, if you're serving in the military, what you may have already been facing,
right,
and have already faced, before you were dishonorably discharged,
right,
just to kind of get dumped,
right.
Like, again, because you wouldn't have gotten any of the resources that you were told you would have, You didn't get any, you had no access to VA benefits, you had no access to VA healthcare, you had no, like, you just got dumped.
Right.
And so to potentially have people that went into some really ugly situations,
Right,
after coming out of potentially ugly situations, to then get dumped in an ugly situation, that's a lot to potentially, like, I'm not saying all like 820 or all 13,000
right,
necessarily had the worst possible experience. I'm just saying within that,
right,
there have to be a number that this was a nightmare in the middle of a nightmare in the middle of a nightmare that then became this like 20, 30-year nightmare. Just to finally get here, and it's like, oh, here you go. Sorry.
Yeah. And the more important thing is the mental coverage. The
it was a horrible time for mental health care.
Yeah.
Period.
Right.
And the messaging that was going on, because I mean, this was the 90s and the early 2000s, and like, I mean, I'm sorry, there's no other nice way to say it. This was the era of God hates fags.
Right.
And literally, like, that, it wasn't like it was there, it was surrounding, it was the message. It wasn't just Westboro Baptist Church that's like spouting this message. They started it and they showed up with it prolifically. But it was the general sentiment that you were getting in a lot of places.
Right.
So that it was a lot to contend with.
Right. And I think that it's even more to contend with now, because they're now older. They don't need their college education. They probably already, if they had the hope of owning a home, probably already has a home.
I mean, we can hope that like someone gets to refinance, or that maybe this has like a last chance shot for someone who has literally, who got dumped and just fell apart.
Right.
To potentially get into a program, and like, we're so sorry about the last 20 years of your life.
Right.
I mean, that's basically all we can say at this point is, we're sorry about the last 20 years of your life. Here's your benefits.
Right.
We'll exhaust them. I can't promise you the world, but yeah, I'm with Brenda. I think we call it a small win.
Yeah, we call it a small win. We call it a Band-Aid. Does it fix the win? No, it's not going to fix the wins. It's not going to give them back their careers. It's not going to give them back the relationships. It's not going to give them back the everything. But at least this is a step in the right direction that's needed. Now we got to wait for Social Security to back the fuck up and give benefits to all of those people that got married in states that it was allowed marry, or out of country.
Oh God, that may be the process from hell. Oh, and I'm sure that's going to move at a snail's pace. But then you also have how many veterans lost spouses,
right,
that they couldn't get insurance for,
right,
that they could have had.
I'll be right back. I gotta go throw somebody out.
Okay. But no, the just like there's it's a singular announcement, and it's not that it's not the right thing. It's just that I think the story and the idea of it tends to gloss over the idea of the potential ramifications that just off the top of my head are kind of clear that this presented to people, and that no, there was a lot at stake with this then, and to just kind of show up now and be like, okay, here you go. It's that glosses over a little bit the struggle. So I feel like, and granted, this is military times covering the situation. I guess I kind of look forward to other authors, other writers for other publications digging in more, to find some of these people and really share their story.
Yeah.
Share what this was and what this actually means.
Right.
Instead of basically a press release, in which there's a lot of glossing over, like, well, we reviewed, we instated benefits,
Right.
and really tell those stories of like what is this?
Right.
Like, what is it like to be 48 years old and you were dishonorably discharged from the military, and what was that then?
Right.
And then what does this actually do for you now? Like, and is it enough? Does it heal? Like, should we be looking at some kind of damages? Like, you abandon these people. Like, our federal government abandoned these people with a dishonorable discharge that was undeserved.
Right.
Because it's fundamentally what a dishonorable discharge does. It says your conduct was inappropriate and get out. We owe you nothing. You don't get anything from us. You screwed up.
Right.
So good luck.
Right.
I mean, that's fundamentally how at least we treat the dishonorable discharge.
Well, we tend to treat a lot of dishonorable discharges, and the important thing is making sure that they can get their whatever form updated. That's the contact, is getting that form updated and getting those benefits moving, and it's been really hard.
So yeah, that's what I was saying, was I'm just kind of looking forward to other writers digging in off of this,
right,
and like springboarding into like, no, really, what was this? What is this? Like, put it in human terms, like,
And why did it take so long? Like, don't ask, don't tell.
To actually, to turn around and finally get it, that like, oh yeah, like, I guess we should probably fix that.
Right.
But no, I mean, again, I don't think everyone had the worst experience possible, and that it was, I'm sure there are some people that it's like, it was okay.
Right.
I got dishonorably discharged. I did something else.
Yeah.
Like, for some, it may have been a very short stay.
Right.
And like, before you even got comfortable, like, your family was fine with you. Like, I'm sure there were those people.
Right.
But there's a potential that there are some that this was just like an inceptional nightmare.
Right.
That just the nightmare inside the nightmare inside the nightmare. So I don't mean to go looking for like tragedy porn. Right. But I think this, again, just really kind of glosses over.
Right. And I think that it's more than just a tragedy glossing over. I think it's more of a complete ridiculous that it took them from 2011 to 2024 to back up and start the process to fixing this.
Yeah. Well, but we've often seen this with our government, which typically does move slow, especially with our military.
Right.
But we've seen this in other scenarios as well, in which the government went, oh,
right,
yeah, okay, so he caught us.
Right.
We didn't do the thing. And then it's decades later before they ever admit anything they did wrong, and then by the time they've admitted anything wrong, it's like, well, how many people are left to even receive a benefit?
Right.
You know, and that's kind of what I'm wondering here is was there that kind of impact? Like, are we just revising status for a bunch of deceased people?
Right.
With
And
no real benefit or beneficiaries to come forward because you know what I mean, like how like you could potentially have destroyed someone so badly in this abandonment that they're no longer with us.
right.
So
And I think that, that then those death benefits need to be paid out.
well, but it's beyond the death benefits.
Right.
It's actually recognizing the harm of just like you turn these people out in the cold for literally something that you're now going to come back and say, oh, we shouldn't have dishonorably discharged you.
Right.
We're going to change your status, bully on us.
Right.
But is functionally, like in some cases, and that's kind of what I'm talking about, too little too late. Like the damage was done.
Right.
Like, oh, we're going to go back and give you some extra money for your burial. Like,
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Or potentially, like years of medical care that they've been paying out of pocket.
Right.
That, before some tragic end.
Right.
And like, are we going to do that? Or are we just going to be like, oh, we changed your status. We're going to move forward now. Like, if you still have a claim, you can come forward.
Right.
But otherwise, our bad won't do that again. You know what I mean? And that's sometimes how the federal government comes across, and it's how the military comes across in these situations.
Right. Which is ridiculous. And, sometimes it is too little too late. Sometimes the damage is done. But at least there's a small win in something.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like when, like you go back to, well, and across the pond, like the whole Alan Turing situation, where posthumously, he is, like awarded and celebrated and by Queen Elizabeth, for his contributions to World War II with Enigma and all this. And it's like, okay, only to go back and look at like his life after the war. You abandoned him.
Right.
Like, you destroyed this man. Like, he's, I don't want to say single-handedly per se, but functionally on some level, you want to sit here and celebrate all the greatness he did and his contribution to the war. And it was a very massive contribution. But at the time, he was just another gay guy that you sentenced to chemical castration, who ultimately, if I remember correctly, ended his own life. Hello, hi, you don't get to show up and celebrate him. You need to first really set with, like, this is horrible.
Right.
Which technically, if I remember correctly, in her way, Queen Elizabeth did do. I mean, it wasn't everything in a bag of chips, but like she tried.
Right.
I mean, it was an awkward situation for her that was a little beyond her.
Well, I think that's more than beyond her. I think she done what she could to correct the wrong of the time. I mean, because 54.
I know it's there was an obscure reference.
Yeah, because she had just became queen in 52.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if she was able to do much, when he was alive, and then at death, after his death, she apparently done a lot. But again, too little, too late. But these are the reasons we need to learn history.
Well, yeah, but it was the whole fact that, like, he passes in 1954. It was the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Like 50 some years later.
Right.
That finally, oh yeah, we're gonna say some things.
Right.
And it's like, and I think the part that bothers me the most, and I know it's an IT reference, but the part that bothers me the most is like, that was the man with the most recognizable name on the projects.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's Alan fucking Turing.
Right.
Yeah. How many other people did he represent?
Right.
Who didn't have the big name, that were even more horribly treated, or were just as horribly treated.
Right.
And the realities, and it's especially, I find it especially egregious among people who are LGBT, for the fact that so often, not only were they abandoned by their government, but they were simultaneously, either simultaneously or also abandoned by their families.
Right.
And also, like, there was no one to take up a mantle for them.
Right.
And be like, look, this isn't cool.
Right.
So it just,
yeah, and
it comes off particularly ugly. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that same, like, if you were to get dishonorably discharged for another reason entirely, and you are straight as an arrow.
Right.
Your mama is going to be there.
Right.
Like, every fucking mama's going to be there.
Right.
Till her last dying breath, fighting the fact that you were dishonorably discharged. If it were not true.
Right.
And screaming from the rooftops.
Right.
So when you have a community that's particularly affected, LGBT people, and especially during these time periods, there was no one there.
Right.
Like, in many cases, these were unclaimed bodies. These were people who died with no contacts.
Right.
No next of kin. That were ultimately treated by society as human waste.
Right.
So I find it especially egregious that to then come back decades later, trying to do the right thing, that for some of these people, it sincerely doesn't matter.
Right.
Long dead, long gone, completely oblivious to anything you did.
Right.
Now, I can appreciate going forward.
Right.
That at least it sets a tone. At least it sets a precedent. At least it opens a door for future issues to be, like, here's how we handle
rectify. Right.
But I think in this particular instance, there's a very high likelihood that, like, some of the people that are getting the status change no longer exist.
Right.
And there's no family to care. And no one's ever going to claim a benefit. And no one's going to sit here and go, well, thank fucking God.
Right.
Let's, by the way, now sue the hell off of everyone. to make this right. Because now you fully admitted you effed up.
Right.
So let me drag in all the things this created.
Right.
For a number of people, no one's going to do that.
Right.
Again, I don't know that it's a huge number. I don't know that it's everyone. I really sincerely hope it isn't. But there's going to be a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not on the paper it's printed on.
Right. And that's saddening.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move into a topic, but I'm giving a trigger warning before we move into this topic. It is not a nice topic, but it's a topic that affects a lot of people. So parents, put your earphones on. If you're listening.
And we're going to make a word substitution here.
Right.
All right. So the American father and daughter, 12, driven to unalive themselves by a catfish in Northern Ireland. Excuse me. Alexander McCartney is awaiting sentencing after targeting at least 70 children online, including Cimarron Thomas, whose heartbroken grandparents said, "Our lives will never be the same." So let's see. All right. I had to figure out where this article started. So Cimarron Thomas, 12, unalived with her father's handgun, rather than comply with the demands of the UK's most prolific catfish. And her heartbreaking death had equally tragic repercussions when her father, Ben Thomas, a former U.S. Army veteran, died by unaliving 18 months after his daughter. The child from West Virginia in the United States can now be named in the UK after an anonymity order was lifted by a judge in Belfast. Alexander McCartney, 26, a former computer student from County Armagh in Northern Ireland. I don't know why I'm having so many problems with the word Ireland today. Pleaded guilty to her manslaughter and is likely to be sentenced next week after targeting at least 70 children online. Posing as a girl, he befriended youngsters on social media, then used images they had sent him to demand more, a practice known as catfishing. That's not exactly true. We'll get into that. His victims in the UK's largest catfish case were aged between 10 and 16 and located in the UK, continental Europe, America, Australia, and New Zealand. He had previously admitted a total of 185 charges, including blackmail, inciting a child to engage in sexual activity, and producing and distributing indecent images of children. The prosecution said he had been particularly callous, deliberately targeting victims who were either gay or exploring their sexuality and had, quote, degraded and humiliated them. A barrister said the harm he caused is unquantifiable. Much of the detail in the case is too graphic and disturbing to detail. In a pre-sentencing hearing, the judge called it excruciating. McCartney told one girl he would send people to her home to violate her sexually. Sorry, we have ads on this one and it keeps jumping around on me.
Right.
In some, if she didn't comply, in some instances, he demanded his victims involve younger siblings. Cimarron Thomas was found dead by her 9-year-old sister. In an impact statement, her grandparents said, "Our lives will never be the same." Quote, "We didn't get to see her graduate, walk down the aisle, or have children. We have been robbed of those memories. Our lives have changed forever." So, all right, so let's clean up the catfish thing because I think this article meant what it said, but what it said is confusing.
Right.
Okay, so catfishing in and of itself is using someone else's images to pose as them to a third party.
Right.
Which I'm thinking is part of what did occur here.
Right.
But the way that sentence worded it, you could get confused. So I wanted to put an asterisk on that so we could fix it.
Well, and the other one was befriending.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't befriending. This was forming relationships. They're using befriending here to make it palatable, because this is coming from Sky News. They have to do certain things. They can't say certain things in the news there.
Fair enough. But yeah, no, it's well, and it's not untrue. There is a certain befriending that is going on there. As they are pretending to be someone's friend.
Right.
They are exploiting these kids. And then through this, fake friendship that they're creating, using information they're gathering and manipulating them bet by bet, piece by piece, and the sad part in these cases is that it's a breadcrumb trail,
right,
of one little thing. To one little thing, to one little thing, to one little thing, and then suddenly you're so far down this trail,
right,
that yes, if you had originally been asked to do this, you would have said no,
right.
But now you've got so far down this, that the previous thing you did 2, 3, 10 steps ago, in this series of interactions, has now become its own piece of blackmail.
Right.
So the idea that you're going to do this one next thing and negate that, it very much plays on the realities that we all have. Is you finding yourself in that moment where you're just trying to get out of one problem without realizing you're walking into the next problem.
Right. And, this is so disheartening. I mean, this case is huge. And there's no good words. I'm glad that this person is getting charged. And they were able to track him back to who he is. Because a lot of times these catfish, you can't track back.
Yeah. Well, but I think it's also becoming a situation, or maybe the bit of luck in this,
right,
is that blackmail especially, which was part of this, a lot of people who commit that act don't ever expect to get caught.
Right.
Because who's gonna, you know what I mean? If you go to the police, you have to admit all the things involved.
Right.
That establish the blackmail.
Right.
That would send someone looking for you.
Right.
And typically the victims of blackmail don't report.
Right.
And so that's why I kind of have to start with this as a blackmail case with horrible other things involved.
Right.
Because if you look at its core functionality, it's blackmail.
Right.
That's ultimately where it ends up.
Right.
Because when you look at how this functions, it's also very similar, and the struggle that people have with being scammed on, with phone calls. And if someone called you up and said, give me your account, your routing and account number for your bank account, you'd slam down the phone.
Right.
Any reasonable person, you call them up and say, hi, I need your, routing and account number. They're going to go, screw you, and slam down the phone.
Right.
I'm not giving you that. It's also this breadcrumb trail
Mm-hmm.
that, creates an artificial fear.
Right.
That slowly gets you to do one thing that confirms you in a direction.
Right.
And then a next, and a next, and a next. Like you've accepted them as the authority they said they were.
Mm-hmm.
You've accepted that they have demonstrated your problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just keeps snowballing forward until eventually the situation gets so tense,
right,
that you fall into this moment of like, if any reasonable person picked up the phone and called you and started here,
mm-hmm.
you would have hung up the phone and walked away.
Right.
And been like, crazy nut, I ain't giving you that.
Right.
But because you are now so many breadcrumbs down this trail,
mm-hmm.
all you want is for it to stop.
Right.
And you don't know how to make that stop.
Right. And here's the thing with this is, he's dealing with children. Adults fall into this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They get scammed all the time into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Military men do not need you to send them gift cards.
No.
Okay. Military, people that work on oil rigs,
or cruise ships,
or all this. Just stop. Just stop.
Yeah, well,
you can't lay your hands on them. Just stop.
Yeah, well, but see, no, the reason I said cruise ship, by the way, I do know someone who fell for it was a guy told her literally everything she needed to hear to be enamored.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his thing was, well, I work on a cruise ship and I'm going to get paid, but I can't get my money. Could you, like, if I get my business person to send you this, can you go buy, I think it was like iTunes cards, and then send me the numbers from them, and I'll make sure he sends you a little extra. And
yeah,
sure enough, hook, line, and sinker, like, and the fact that I got contacted
mm-hmm.
and told early on,
mm-hmm.
and like asked, do you think the check's real? And I'm like, it's a real check.
Mm-hmm.
Should you cash it? Oh God, no.
Right.
Stop here. Do not cash this check. Do not do it.
Mm-hmm.
Cash the check. Cash the check.
Right.
And I'm just like, and it kept going and going and going. And it's like, no, the money was real. I bought a purse. And I'm like, this is going to be so bad.
Right.
And it was like a couple of weeks later that the bank caught up to all of it. And the original defrauded consumers were, wanting the charges reversed and the kid checks returned. And it just, like, the numbers got insane. Like, she had opened multiple bank accounts to keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And it's like
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think by the time all this was said and done, like, she had done something like $20,000 worth of check cashing,
mm-hmm.
and then forward that money in iTunes cards,
mm-hmm.
and then kept a portion that she was supposed to keep,
mm-hmm.
And just like,
yeah.
And you're just sitting there, and like, even then, even as like the checks are bouncing.
Mm-hmm.
And the negative balance on these accounts is skyrocketing.
Mm-hmm.
She's still sitting there going, it's got to be a mistake.
Yeah.
Because it's that level of connection that was made. Like, all the psychological tricks, like a whole bag of psychological tricks used against her, to the point that she's locked in.
Right.
He loves me. This dude's real. He means it.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a mistake.
Right.
And it's like, there's no mistake. This is a scam.
You've been had.
Yeah. Which I hate that phraseology. Because the trauma attached with scams is, and this kind of perception that we have is that, like, you're stupid, you fell for it, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of our wording around scams and the people that get caught in them creates a lot of pain and trauma.
Right.
Because it was never about, like, you were stupid.
Right.
Like, these are very, like, tried and tested.
Right.
Psychological. It's psychological warfare.
Right.
Like, there's, in some instances, the only protection you can have against this is just total cynicism that goes, there's no way in hell anyone's going to love me.
Right.
That's how you avoid this.
Right.
That's it. That's all you got.
Right.
How do you look at someone and say that, like, well, if you were smarter, you wouldn't have believed anyone would love you? That's where I struggle. Right. Because it's like, see, I hate that.
Right.
Like, that's a really ugly place to put people, but it is a lot of where they end up after these scams.
Right.
They are scared to death to love someone else.
Right.
Because, well, what if they're lying? Well, what if this is a scam? What if, like, it destroys people's ability to trust.
Right.
I bring all this up, going back over to the article. And the situation is, so how, as a kid, do you trust anyone at this point? You know what I mean? Like how paranoid must you end up?
Right.
I mean, and I hope therapy helps. But I would say there's got to be a level of, like, cynicism around trusting other human beings. With anything, with any information. Like, you just, nope.
Right.
We don't tell nobody nothing about anything.
No. And that's going to be hard, deep therapy in multiple countries. All right. So there's a few more articles that have come out. Australia's got some problems. Some major problems.
All right. So is that the pink news one?
Yes.
Okay. So gang used Grindr to target gay men in calculated series of robberies. Members of a gang used Grindr to target members of the gay community before violently assaulting and robbing them, Birmingham Crown Court has heard. And on Tuesday, September 17th, Damalja Hadza, Abu Bakr Alizawa, Ali Hassan, Wasim Omar, and Mohammed Sharif were convicted of conspiring to commit robbery. It's quite the group. So the group staged a series of robberies between 2023 and 2024 within Birmingham and Derby, the court was told. West Midlands police said the men stole more than £100,000, $133,000, during their 10-month spree, during which, on a number of occasions, they targeted gay men on Grindr. Once lured to
secluded locations, the men would trap their victims, assault them before stealing their belongings and threatening them. A calculated series of robberies, 5 men, all of Birmingham, forced victims to transfer large amounts of money to their bank accounts, left them with injuries, including broken eye sockets, dislocated shoulders, broken noses, many requiring hospital treatment. Detective Inspector Tom Leonza of West Maryland Police Major Crimes Unit said this was a calculated series of robberies with Hassan,
the gang,
deliberately targeting victims because they believed they were vulnerable, easy targets. I'm tired of that word. We aren't easy targets, or we shouldn't be.
All right, sorry, I think I just finally called out. But unfortunately, the reality is, there are like a lot has changed. There are still those that fundamentally are vulnerable, easy targets. Especially if you are very carefully selecting marginalized men.
Right.
Like, it's not just that you're finding them on Grindr.
Right.
But if you're very selective about the men that you're choosing on Grindr,
right.
I.e., guys with no profile information, no photos, that will flat tell you, like, I'm married, I'm on the down low, my family can't find out. That clearly exhibit like that they are ultimately leading a double life already.
Right.
Those are vulnerable, easy targets, unfortunately.
Right. And this is why I don't know, I may put an YouTube video together about this. If you're going to go do a hookup, do not take your full wallet with you. Take your play wallet with you. Do not, not go to an undisclosed location. No, have that address, put that address in a pen, put that address in something that's easily found. The other thing is they thought that the guys wouldn't report this.
Well, in a different era, many guys didn't. Like, this isn't a new crime. They didn't have an original idea. They just moved it to Grindr and used Grindr.
Right.
That's legitimately all that happened here.
Right.
It's not a new idea. It's occurred before. It's been done before. It's been done many times before.
Right. I'm looking at 3 articles of the same thing.
Yeah.
And this is in Texas and Florida. And, this is Australia. Stop it, guys. Stop being dick stupid.
Well, and again, in some instances, we kind of go back to what we were saying the other day is, years ago, the idea of meeting people online was crazy. And why would you invite strangers to your house? Now we go online, and don't get in cars with strangers. Now we go online to invite strangers to our house to pick us up and drive us places.
Right.
Right. Sometimes it can be a struggle,
right,
to figure out which is often referred to jokingly, and I don't mean to make light of this, but I think it does become hard to, in some situations, to necessarily understand the risks. Especially if you don't have a community.
Right.
Which, argumentatively, these men did not.
Right.
And that fundamentally became part of the problem, is without, realizing the danger, they did things without having any plan.
Right.
So, I think the reality is one should be grateful that this gang was not going any farther than it did.
Right.
As any of these men or all of these men could have ended up, dead, buried, and we're not reading a news article right now.
Right.
There's just a lot of strange disappearances.
Right.
That are seemingly unconnected. So that's the forward progress.
Right.
It's incrementally better. But it is a moment where you really do have to understand that sometimes you don't need gay news. You just need the news to talk about in generalities regarding of your gender.
Mm-hmm.
That not everyone that you meet online is there for the reason you think.
Right.
And to some people, regardless of what your gender or ethnicity or religion or marital status or whatever, you're going to look like a target.
Right.
Even if you are like perfect, like you are completely out, everyone knows you, you can still find yourself being looked at by someone who thinks you're a target.
Right.
So,
right.
It's the sad reality there.
It is. Now, you remember the Grindr cannibal that we talked about last year? I think it was last year.
Last year, maybe a little bit before that.
Right.
Actually, potentially a lot before that.
Yeah. Like, it's been a while. Well, he finally got sentenced.
Yeah, so he was sentenced to life in prison for Kevin Bacon murder. So a Michigan man convicted of killing, gutting, and eating the testicles and other body parts of a hairdresser he met on Grindr has been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mart Latunsky, 50, pleaded guilty in September to the December 24th, 2019 murder of Kevin Bacon, 25. Lawyers for Latunsky had previously contended the man was mentally ill and unfit for trial. As a result of Latunsky's confession, Shiawassee County Judge Matthew J. Stewart was tasked with determining whether the crime was first or second degree murder, and he ruled in October the crime qualified as the more serious premeditated first degree. On Thursday, he sentenced Latunsky to the maximum punishment allowed under Michigan law. Michigan abolished the death penalty in 1963. Quote, in your sick, twisted mind, you probably don't think you did anything wrong, Bacon's mother, Hannah, wrote in a statement that was read at the sentencing hearing, the Daily Mail reports. Quote, this Christmas, I hope you suffer like we have. Bacon, a successful hairdresser and a student at the University of Michigan Flint, had told his roommate on Christmas Eve of 2019 he was meeting a man he had been speaking with on Grindr. Bacon was reported missing the following day after he did not show up at his parents' house in Flint for breakfast with family on Christmas Day. Police discovered his body the following Saturday, December 28th, in Bloomfield Township, more than 20 miles from his home. Bacon's naked body was found suspended by the ankles from the rafters of Latunsky's basement with stab wounds in the back and neck, and his body mutilated. Latunsky was not unfamiliar to police, who had been called to his residence multiple times in the 2 months prior to Bacon's murder. In October, a New York man told a 911 operator he had awakened to find himself chained in the basement, believing he had been drugged. Police received a second 911 call a month later in November after a bloodied and terrified man had sought help from Latunsky's neighbor. Latunsky was found wearing nothing more than a leather kilt in this incident, but no charges were filed in either incident. So Latunsky was married twice, both ending in divorce. His former wife, Emily Latunsky, had filed a motion in court in August of 2019 seeking to suspend his access to their children. The motion stated he had been diagnosed several years earlier with major depression, paranoid schizophrenia, and personality disorder characteristics, and they often failed to take prescribed medication. He had been arrested in the previous month for failing to pay child support and spent 4 days in jail. So, yeah, that gets into the story we would have shared previously. But there, like, basically, this was one. Bacon did everything right.
Yes.
Told his roommate what was going on. They clearly had access to figure out where he went.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, like, walked to his door and found him. Even when you do the right thing.
Right.
Some situations you just can't do anything to prevent the realities of someone determined to kill you.
Well, what I don't get is why the law enforcement did not take actions and the two previous incidents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I believe Michigan does have.
I don't know how you would excuse it. Period. Like where in the world in the United States do we not have a kidnapping statute?
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, if you're being held against your will,
Right.
take a police report.
Mm-hmm.
Do something. But I think this also got brought up in the case, or in the conversation of cases of, like, I don't even know how to describe it really. If the victim and the criminal,
right,
or, one or both, involves gay men,
mm-hmm. because they should have fought to put domestic violence on both of these, and they didn't. Where the law enforcement chose not to press charges, even if the victims didn't.
Right. So gay on gay crime, especially, not ignoring, lesbian, bi, and trans, but very much so gay on gay crime, or gay crime in general that involves someone who's gay, as a victim.
Right.
Let's be clear. If you're gay and a victim, tends to get a blind eye of police that just don't want to deal with it.
Right.
That just think you get whatever you get, and we're not here to protect and serve you.
Right.
And that's been a long-standing issue.
Right.
Like that goes back to Stonewall.
It does. And it continues to go back. But the police continue to fail to...
Like, there's some ugly words, and I was having to avoid them.
Right.
That this has, been called in the past. So we're going to go with, gay victim crime.
Right.
Let's just call it that.
Right.
And it's especially gay men. Like, there's also problems for lesbians. There are also problems for bisexuals and people who are trans. And I will freely admit the trans problems are about the same.
Right.
But those crimes are totally different.
Right.
In that, like, that's probably a little bit further back. Like, they're worse in the treatment. But it's been an especially heinous problem.
Right.
Of just this blindness and willful blindness. To any crime involving someone as a gay victim.
Right.
Like, it's icky, we don't touch it, like, run away. We're not taking police reports, we're not going to investigate. If we do investigate, it's half-hearted.
Right.
We don't try to understand, we don't care to understand. We're quick to label it a kink or a fetish, or it's a community thing. That it's a gay thing, and just move on.
Right.
And it's really sad when it's a situation like this where two victims walked away. I'm not saying unharmed. I'm just saying, they live.
Right.
So there were two opportunities, two different people that you could have been more aware of than you were.
Right.
Than you chose to be. Before getting to the third deceased victim.
Right.
And
like, this could have been prevented.
Like, one, I could potentially have some forgiveness for. Like, the first victim, I could go, maybe you weren't sure what you were looking at and you didn't have experience to really handle this, and you made a mistake.
Right.
But it's that second one.
Right.
the second one, like you've had 2 incidents involving this man.
Right.
Involving this scenario.
Right.
Why was there a third?
Right.
How was there a third?
How
How do you not?
Even if both incidents,
Mm-hmm.
the second incident should have put him in jail immediately.
Mm-hmm. Like there's no reason.
No.
That there should be a deceased Kevin Bacon.
Right.
Like that should have never occurred. They should have never met online. He should have never went over to his house because he wasn't on Grindr because Latunsky was in jail.
Exactly.
Like that's how that should have played out.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we get grateful there's not going to be a 4th or a 5th or a 20th before this occurs. That this is not going to become because what this very hallmarks to is his name was Dahmer. Thank you. Yeah. Because it's the same problem.
Right.
It's the same community. It's virtually similar crime or virtually identical crimes, very similar crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar intentions. With a technological twist of Grindr, but ultimately, you shouldn't have in 2019 or 2024 or insert a year. At this point, the same exact police problem,
right,
that Dahmer's victims had in the 70s and 80s. Like you're telling me that you're policing in a 40-year period hadn't really changed.
No.
Like that's where you are with this whole gay thing.
Right.
Like, you didn't replace an officer? Is this the only people you hire? Did you not stop and like read a headline and go, might want some training on that? I mean, it's just it's kind of inconceivable.
Right.
That that many years after Dahmer, this still occurs
and continues.
The same kind of handling. Right. I mean, granted, not as many victims.
Right.
Like a little quicker on the draw. But ultimately,
right.
It's where you started was the same place. What is wrong with this picture? Like, I can kind of understand how Dahmer got as far as he did in the time period that he did. With everything else in the world at that point.
Right.
I can sit here, I can be angry about it, which I am, but I can, okay, like, it was bad, but for the time period, it was what it was.
Right.
But in 2019, like 2019, this is where you still are.
Right.
How?
Right. How is it that the police officers are not enforcing the same laws? Okay, if this was a man and woman situation, he would have been locked up.
Well, but it even sounds like with the situation he was in, his ex-wife couldn't get them to do shit.
No.
Like, the most they were doing was trying to protect those kids.
Right.
And that's if they were, if she was able to manage to get his access to them terminated.
Right.
That's if. Because I don't have high confidence that they thought there was anything wrong. And it's like, that's a level of, wow. Jesus. Could like, do you realize, like, how ugly, like there's a lot of risk here.
Right.
Like, this could be a lot uglier than than even it is. But yeah.
Ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But life in prison.
We'll take life imprisonment.
Yeah. I hate that for Kevin Bacon's mother. That's right. You deserved better. Your child deserved better. The world deserved better, and especially the residents and supposed protectees of Flint, Michigan law enforcement deserved better.
Right.
So I hope you sue him for everything he got, or everything they got.
Yeah.
Like just.
I would hope that all three victims sue.
Oh yeah. 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 Like they should have never been left in this situation.
Right.
So I hope it's a huge lawsuit. I know no amount of money will ever repay you for what you went through or take the place of a child. But maybe it'll cause them to move forward, and no other mother, no other sibling, no other person will go through this again.
Right.
And sometimes that's all we get.
Yeah. All right, guys. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll be finding out if Joe's the asshole this week.
All right.
Well, maybe.
Love diving into metaphysical topics, psychic insights, and lively discussions? Now you can help keep the conversation going. By becoming a Patreon supporter of The Psychic Coffee Shop, you'll gain access to exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights, and special perks just for our patrons. Join our community and ensure that your favorite psychic show continues to thrive. Your support helps us bring more enlightening episodes, special guests, and deep dives into the world of the unseen. Become a patron today and enjoy a cup of wisdom with us every week. Click the link to join the baristas and unlock exclusive content. Thank you for your support.
Unlock your full potential with Aeson Knight's life coaching. Are you ready to take control of your life and manifest the future you deserve? Aeson Knight, a seasoned life coach and master psychic, is here to guide you on a transformative journey. Whether you're navigating personal challenges, career transitions, or seeking spiritual growth, Aeson's life coaching services offer tailored guidance to help you achieve your goals. With Aeson by your side, you'll discover the tools to overcome obstacles, embrace your true self, and create a life filled with purpose and fulfillment. His unique blend of spiritual insight and practical coaching empowers you to turn your dreams into reality. Ready to make a change? Book your session today and start your journey to a more empowered, balanced, and joyful life with Aeson Knight. Click the link to schedule your first session and step into your power.
Are you ready for an electrifying podcast experience that keeps you coming back for more? Join Aeson Knight every week as he takes you on a journey through captivating shows, each exploring unique and fascinating topics. And here's the best part. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode where you can get your burning questions answered live on air, absolutely free. Whether it's relationship advice, career guidance, or mystical insights, Aeson's podcasts have got you covered. When you subscribe, you become part of a vibrant community, engaging directly with Aeson as he shares his wisdom and leaves you feeling empowered and enlightened. Don't miss out. Subscribe now and be part of the conversation. What you'll get by subscribing: Monday 5 p.m. Metaphysics. Today, soulful conversations with Aeson Knight and Firefly, exploring the essence of metaphysics in today's world. Tuesday 8 p.m. The Psychic Coffee Shop. Dive into current events with a psychic twist, featuring special guests and thought-provoking discussions. Friday 9 p.m. The Mountain Bears Podcast. Lively discussions from a gayish, techy-ish, bearish perspective with Aeson and Joe. Sunday 5 p.m. Psychic That Plans. Get a weekly tarot energy overview and time management tips from Aeson Knight. Click here to subscribe now and never miss an episode. By subscribing, you're not just tuning in, you're joining a community of curious minds and ensuring you're always in the loop with Aeson's insightful and interactive shows. Don't wait. Hit that subscribe button and get ready for an amazing podcast journey.
Ready for an enchanting journey of self-discovery? Join Lord Aeson Knight in our Wicca courses. Unveil the secrets of Wicca. Explore deity relationships, rituals, and more. As a third-degree high priest, Aeson Knight guides you toward empowerment and enlightenment. Enroll today and take your first step into the magical circle. Click the link to begin your journey.
Psychic Saturday. Get 50% off with Aeson Knight every third Saturday of the month. Don't miss out. Book now.
Good evening, right back. All
Yeah,
right.
we're back. Yes.
All right. So, plead your case.
All right. Get your feline proxies ready to vote. Am I the asshole for refusing to host Thanksgiving this year? Part of our continuing lead up to the holiday season. All right. Last year, I, female 30, and my darling husband, DH, male 30, hosted my in-laws for Thanksgiving. It was a disaster. I am a nurse and work nights. I was exhausted. I was late making dinner. My dear darling husband's grandparents had to get fast food because I took too long to cook. My mother-in-law was supposed to bring 3 sides, but she ended up bringing 1 frozen meatloaf that was about 6 inches long to feed 9 people. Essentially, she brought nothing to share. They came over, and at the end of the night, they packed up all our food and took it with them. We were under the impression they were putting the food in our fridge because that's what they said they were doing. We had absolutely no leftovers. Earlier this year, my husband's grandmother died after a 3-week hospital stay. I did everything I could to be there for mother-in-law. I brought food, showed up every other day to spend time with grandma, drove grandpa back and forth to visit. When she passed, I bought mother-in-law a dress for the funeral. I checked in on mother-in-law. Hubby and I drove grandpa to the funeral. Ever since, my mother-in-law has been standoffish. I don't know why. I've run myself ragged to take care of her. Her own children don't check in on her as often as I do, or did. A week ago, she called me to ask about Thanksgiving dinner, and I told her I wasn't cooking. I was tired. I work a lot, 50 hours a week, and I don't appreciate people taking food they didn't cook out of my kitchen. She immediately started crying and telling me she lost her best friend. It's the first holiday season without her mom. She's sad. She's lonely. I told her tough luck. I'm tired of being taken for granted. She called my darling husband, who said he was staying out of it, but now might not be the time for me to make a grand statement. Am I the asshole?
Now, and I want to teach you a very important sentence. We will be having Thanksgiving at the Cracker Barrel. We will be having Thanksgiving at the Golden Corral. We will be having Thanksgiving at your house.
Yeah. No, don't even put yourself in that. Look, I hate your mother-in-law has lost her mother. I'm sure this is very hard for the family. I do hope, however, you grab grandpa and go do something.
Right.
This is going to be very hard for him. Your mother-in-law really needs to think about how she shows appreciation and how to be a dinner guest.
Right.
Because it seems like she should know better.
Mm-hmm.
So while I don't necessarily appreciate your approach, though I do appreciate your honesty and directness,
Mm-hmm.
I do somewhat agree with your husband that now might not be the time to make a grand statement, like, put down the baseball bat.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to drive this one home too hard.
All right.
But I think it's a very fair sentiment.
Right.
So I'm gonna go with not the asshole. Don't push it.
Yeah.
Not the asshole yet.
Mm-hmm.
Don't push it.
Right.
Don't push it.
again, there are many options. I've learned these options over the last 7 years. We will be executing one of the many options.
Yeah, we're not hosting. I mean, though, like, we're, like, I'm sorry. Are we all tired yet? Like, it was a lovely idea. Like, don't get me wrong. I love the idea of, we're gonna host a great big Thanksgiving and we're gonna invite everyone over, and that's not our lifestyle.
No. I will lovely join you at one of the restaurants. I will help plan Thanksgiving that we order from one of the lovely services, and it's delivered, and it's joyous, and
or picked up, either which way.
picked up.
There's lots of options, but not one of those should be, as we have done. Now, granted, in some situations we were able to do this, but and we were, a few years younger,
right?
But even then, it was a push,
right?
It was too much,
right.
And it's where we've gotten to is that, like, neither one of us is a stay-at-home housewife,
no,
or house husband, or house spouse,
right?
Which I do love the rhyme of that, but unfortunately don't get to live.
Yeah.
Nor do I want to, really.
Our house spouses. Neither of the three of us work less than 40 hours.
Nope.
And to be honest, I'm tired. I got tired of cooking a good while ago.
Yeah.
Especially big meals that went in the freezer that we ate in July.
Yeah. Or throughout. It's just, like, I'm sorry. I really do, anyone who wants to take up the effort.
Right.
And I hope you have that well received and well appreciated. But if you're not, and you don't want to, or emphasis on you work too much, to want to, don't.
Right.
You don't really need a reason. You don't need to even point out that your mother-in-law was a bitch. Which, face it, she was.
Yeah.
You nope.
Right.
Back them up, move them out. We ain't doing it here.
Right.
Or with you.
Right.
Stop spending holidays with people you can't stand.
Right.
Don't do it. It's never worth it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. You don't have to do it. If you need someone to tell you you don't have to do it, I'm here to tell you you don't have to do it.
Right.
Blame me. I will gladly become the punching bag of why aren't you coming or hosting or cooking for the holidays? Because Joe said.
Right.
I'll gladly take that. I will gladly take the hate mail.
Right. And that's Joe at aeonlight.com. All right.
Moving along. All right. Long-term polyam people. So this is our polyamory. Right. So long-term polyam people, how do you accept no longer being the new shiny? This isn't my struggle right now, but it's something I can see happening in the future. So I'd love opinions specifically from people who have been doing this a while. Let's say you meet someone. Initially, you have tons of chemistry and NRE, and later find out you have the compatibility too. You two are together for a while, let's say at least a year, and then you meet someone else. You two are in a great place, good communication, they're reliable and consistent, and you see real potential. But this new person is someone they're really excited about, and it shows. They have new sparkly energy, and with this person, they're not doing anything wrong, to be clear. They're still keeping to their dates with you, texting you consistently, showing up as a partner, and making you feel cared about. But it's not coming as effortlessly as it's coming with the new person. They still love you, care about you, but it's not that intense excitement, the I wonder what will happen, the active pursuit of you, where it's clear they feel no obligation to talk or spend time with you, and they're just doing it because they're excited. It makes complete sense. The 100th time you ride a roller coaster is not going to feel as exciting as the first, no matter how much you still enjoy it. Our brains fire out chemicals when we like something new, like someone new, that make us feel like we're on coke. Hell, you could not even like the person that much, but the chemical cocktail makes you hyper-focus. I get it. Even if I can logically understand this, how do I accept that I won't be that person for my partners forever? It's so nice in the beginning when the person is just so gaga over you without much effort. You don't even have to ask them to text you more or see you more, etc., because they just do it naturally and enthusiastically because it's new and they're excited. Another part of this is I think I tend to have NRE that lasts longer than other people do. I can have NRE years into a relationship. I still feel just as bubbly and romantic. It's not that my partners have lost interest, but I think I can just maintain a level of infatuation that most don't. So how do you cope with this? How do you not let it affect your self-esteem? I think the last part's going to be the important part here, is that they seem to have the extended release NRE. Because quite frankly, in most relationships, I think it's kind of a moment of, as I sum it up, take my husband, please.
Right.
Gladly will I not.
Right.
Gladly will I send them out into the world with you. Please, please keep them as long as you can.
Well, and I think the other viewpoint here, and it's the harder viewpoint that we see in relationships in general, and there's actually a few studies on this, that it's actually better for them to go do that somewhere else and then come back to you because that infatuation increases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's the part we don't often talk about, is that and it is part of non-monogamy in general. Like, it's not just polyamory.
Right.
Like non-monogamy in general. And I'll even go out on the limb and point out that even unethical non-monogamy has this as a feature. Right. Is that when you are in a relationship, an existing relationship, a quote unquote we could call stale relationship, like you're out of NRE, this is stabilized. You know what I mean? Right. Like you're not bubbly anymore.
Right.
So I'm using the word stale. Not in a like this is a bad relationship way, just in a like this, like all the carbonation's gone.
Right.
Like you settle.
Right.
When you go out of a relationship,
right,
and spend time with someone else, whatever the situation may be,
right,
and it is reported in like cheating even, is that partners come back with like a new appreciation for their existing partner.
Right.
Partners come back with a new appreciation because yes, sparkly and new is fun. And it is exciting.
Right. Well, what I found interesting
also makes you appreciate what you have. And that sometimes new and sparkly is kind of like having a new puppy and it shits on the carpet.
Right.
You don't hate the puppy. You don't beat the puppy. You like the puppy. The puppy's so cute. But you really appreciate the older dog that scratches the door and lets you know. Well, in advance. I need to go out.
Right. But Esther, her name's Esther something or other. I can't remember her last name. She's a researcher. She just released some research on something on how did you because after 43 days of dating somebody, your body adjusts to the chemicals, the oxytocin that they produce. They're no longer shiny.
Right. For most people.
For most people. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. But she just researched something, and it found out that relationships where partners do trips or partners are seen in a different light, i.e. they do a stage performance, i.e. they do some other function, something different, it renews that NRE emotions. Then she went into looking at multiple partner relationships and how that affects things. And it's actually found that having the new partner causes that NRE to reoccur, even at a lower level, with your standard partner. With
the pre-existing. Yeah.
Exactly. Because even on like short term, like I go out on a date, when I come home, I'm going to get that same ethanol dopamine really seeing you as I did when we first dated. And that's one of the more complex, people always go, is love destined? No, it's biochemical related. There is love destiny. And what's interesting, and what the study even found even more interesting, is the more good the date goes, the more emotional and biochemicals you're going to get coming home to your nesting.
Well, and I think it doesn't even have to be a date. Because now, granted, there are partners that will have like travel trauma. That like the thought of their spouse being away for like, a weekend business trip, whatever, just the anxiety eats them alive. But for a lot of people, like that has its own like NRE kick to it.
Right.
It's not as long lasting and everything else, but that there is truth to absence makes the heart grow fonder. In which just having a period of separation, sometimes day,
right?
If like you're like our situation, we both work from home, like we're constantly here 24/7. So when I'm having to travel to do something, like that return has its own kind of NRE kick.
Right.
That like you were out of sight, out of mind. And then I came home and it's like, oh, it's you.
Yeah.
And it's not a negative. Like sorry if I said that badly. I'm still getting over a cold or a sinus infection. But it's different. No, does it last for the next 6 months? No. But in even in couples that they both work, or at least one works outside the home, you're not going to get that every day, but send a spouse on a business trip.
Right.
Take a few days and go on vacation alone.
Right.
Go see your mama. You can get a little kick there.
Right. You can also get a little kick from doing other things. What I mean by other things is going out and doing other things, beginning, new, a lot of people have problems with their spouses coming to things. I love when Joe comes to things because he sees me in a different direction. And I think a lot of people get really up close and upset. When their partners are in different situations. But at the same time, and please don't auto start, great, because that woman's name is driving me crazy.
Okay.
Crap, it isn't here.
Okay.
But is seeing me in a different light actually causes him to have a chemical release, a different psychological view chemical release. So doing a show, like in person, doing an event, all that causes a change in the biochemistry, not the psychochemistry, but the biochemistry on the mind.
Yeah, well, and again, there's a lot of different ways that occurs. And there's often, and for some couples, it sounds really stupid. And like they'll really fight it, but like take something that neither one of you knows how to do and go take a class. Learn how to do it. Go have a new experience together.
Right.
Like totally, like you don't know what you're doing or how to do it, or you've never been there. You know nothing about this, and learn about it together. And it has kind of the same like re-kick of that biochemical release.
Right. Well, it's like
because it very much mimics like the whole newness of a relationship in which, well, yes, you know your partner, yes, you've seen them naked 1,000 times, and you've been 1,000 places and done 1,000 things with them. This wholly new situation that neither one of you understand or know anything about kind of resets that stage of, I don't know who you are here.
Right.
I don't know what we're doing. I don't know how to do it. Neither one of us can do anything but learn and figure it out together.
Right. Well, it's like, you tell it as a horror story, and I'm like, it was a really cool experience. Was one of our anniversaries, we went and took the Narcan.
I joke. Yeah, I joke about it as a horror story.
Right.
Like, I will find something for us to do.
Right.
Don't ever say there's nothing we can do this year, because I will find something.
Yes.
But no, in the middle of the panini, we had an anniversary, and like you couldn't go to a restaurant, you couldn't take a class, you couldn't go see a movie. Like, there's a long laundry list of things that you cannot go do right now.
Right.
And so we're just sitting here like, there's fuck all we can do for this anniversary. Like, I think the best we're going to be able to manage on this one is like takeout.
Yeah.
Like, that's all we got. Like, maybe we can find a park that we won't get kicked out of.
Right.
If we really want to push it, but otherwise we're basically doing takeout. And that's it. That's the whole anniversary. And just so happened, we had been looking to get information and trying to get into, and this is related to a whole longer story, but short version, we had an interest in Narcan training due to an event that occurred at an event.
Right.
So I had been asking around to some people that are clients.
Right.
About any, Narcan trainings they knew of, and they're like, sure, well, let me look into that and see what I can find for you.
Right.
It's cool. So the night before our anniversary, I get this message that says tomorrow at like 11 a.m.
Right.
there is an Narcan training, and they are open enrollment. Like, click this link, sign up, you're in.
Right.
Doesn't cost anything. Like, and so, we, on that wholly separate front, we're like, oh, finally, the Narcan training, yay. So we both hurriedly do this. And then I stopped and realized we're going to do Narcan training for our anniversary.
Right.
That's just so, it's so absurd. But we spent the day together doing something that we knew literally almost nothing about.
Right.
I mean, marginally knew a couple of things about, maybe, but like otherwise, like seriously, we have no clue what we're doing.
Exactly.
Why we want to be here? We just like there's whole terminologies, and we're having to learn things.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what? Like, what? Huh?
How?
Yeah. So it was really great training, but it was very like, we cracked up a room full of people.
Right.
Because I could not say it. Is like, so we're spending our anniversary doing Narcan training.
Like Nerd Village City, I'm sure most people thought, or how horrible of a husbands are we? That doesn't sound romantic.
Well, no, I think there was this laughter, like, this is so weird, and I'd kill my husband if he did this to me. You know what I mean? Like, that was the level I think this was hitting people at. And it's like, I just can't believe you spent, like, what? Like, one of you are going to end up dead, and Narcan ain't going to help. was the general mentality in the room.
Well, that or they,
everyone
they don't get that, like, this is the weird shit we do as a couple.
Well, but it was literally at a point, like, there was nothing else we were going to get to go do.
Right.
Like, we had tried, and like, we had literally thought through anything we could do. And it was down to, like, we're going to have to do takeout in a movie. Like, that's, like Netflix, a movie or whatever. That's it. That's our only options here.
Mm-hmm.
Because nothing's open. Everything's closed. Everything's shut down. Everything's unavailable. It's too much of a risk, even if we find somewhere.
Right.
Like, and just on and on and on and on. Right. And it was like, okay. And so, like, just having the reality that, like, no, we have something to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's Narcan training, but we're doing something together on an anniversary. We are taking a class.
Right. That, we need to renew, I believe. I know I've got to renew my Narcan, but I don't know if we need to renew the class or if the class has changed or whatever. But no,
classes,
and it was something that was on our couple's bucket list of, like, we need to do this.
Yeah. Well, but additionally, like, but when most people talk about, we went on our anniversary and we did a class, it's like cooking or, pottery or, painting or most people, like, if you let them guess what class we took, it's going to take a while before they work down the list of classes that come to mind.
All right. Well, let's work through those class ideas for a minute. Cooking, please. We both can cook. Debatable on who does best and it's really what dish. Painting, I suck at it. We proved that on our other couple experiment on the family vacation.
Well, but we did it.
We did it. And I thought it was fun. Like, I enjoyed it, but I sucked at it. I'm definitely abstract. Let's just say that.
Like, if you can pick me out of a lineup using that artist sketch of me,
yeah. But, those are things that couples do. Those are couples that long-term do.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, there's a lot of different classes, and I'm sure we would have had fun with, like, bowls and pottery or whatever.
I think, like, pottery would be fun.
There's all kinds of stuff.
But this concern of, like, oh, I'm not the new shiny. Good, don't be new shiny.
Like, well, I think some people have a real attachment, and it's sometimes. I think for a lot of people that don't have a lot of long-term dating experience, whose relationships maybe blow up right at the end of or just after the NRE wears off, and you're just kind of looking at each other like, ew.
Yeah.
This was great while my brain was firing all the chemicals, but now it's just, oh, sorry, bye.
Right.
I think if that's your dating history, like, it creates this fear that, like, this is how it always works, because it's your pattern. It's what's happened.
Right.
Is like everything's great, and then the NRE wears off, and then it isn't, and then it's not a relationship anymore.
Right.
And then you start over. And so the idea that, like, like this uncharted territory of, like, we have a functional relationship and we're out of NRE. And
yeah, and people grow and change and they reflect and they get more reflective, and it's like I tell everybody in the morning before my coffee, I like no one. Put me in the car with the dog and my laptop and I will drive to wherever. But by the end of the night, I better be loving all of you or there's a problem.
Yeah.
All right. Absolutely. So the poll is in.
All right. How did the cats vote this time?
No, you are not the asshole for refusing to cook Thanksgiving dinner for your family because you work night shift, are a nurse at 50 hours a week, and they are freaking unappreciative.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
So good show, good show.
Awesome.
We will be back on Sunday at 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And flip.
All right. So, of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Brenda, Joan Owen, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Caitlin Bell, Devin, Bella, and Maria Meyer. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yes. And see, kitty. All right, guys. Again, we'll see you at 6 p.m. as we plan out my week. And this is not a standard week because apparently Wednesday's going to be interesting. Until then, guys, we'll see you later.
Oh, and Psychic Saturdays tomorrow.
Yes, Psychic Saturday is tomorrow. There is still time to book. There are limited appointments. You want to grab them while you can.
You do. All right.
All right, y'all. Good night.
Good night.